Well, looking at the country, a lot has been discussed when it comes to of Azimio has raised issues on that finance bill 2023 that has been proposed by Treasury. We will be looking at some of the things that have been contentious in that bill, but that is a little bit earlier. But before then, we are discussing matters the sugar industry. Well, over the years, the sugar industry has been ailing with a number of even sugar factories having to close shop. Well, what is ailing the sector? What are some of the challenges facing this sector, and what are some of the remedies that can be looked into, including research? And mostly, I would like us to focus mostly on research, because the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, KARO, has been doing a lot to help the sugar industry. That is a discussion that we are going to be having. My name is Njue. Byron Abuli will be our sign language interpreter for this live program. And of course, you can weigh in or even send us your comments, suggestions, or even where you are watching us from. We are live on all our social media platforms as well. And without further ado, allow me to introduce Dr. Betty Mulianga. Dr. Betty is the director of Kalro-Sugar Research Institute. She'll be telling us a lot about what they are doing behind the scenes to ensure that we jumpstart this ailing industry. Karibu sana daktari.
Yeah. Asante sana. I want to say good morning to all our listeners and those who are following us from wherever they are. Been able to inform so many people on our social media, but so that they cannot be able to miss on this very important session of KBC Live. Thank you so much for inviting us, and we'll be glad to discuss matters research.
Karibu sana. What is the current status of the sugar industry in Kenya of the few years that, let's say in the last 10 years, what we have witnessed is that we are importing a lot of sugar, and some of even the industries have collapsed. A number of issues that are affecting the sugar industry in the country. What is our current situation?
Yeah, currently in the sugar industry, we have 16 sugar mills. And these sugar mills, 5 of them are government-owned. Unfortunately, they have the old machineries, kind of machineries that they are still using, comparable to the private sector, where we have very recent machineries that have high recovery. I'll say that we have sugarcane already in 15 counties across the country, mainly in the western part. When I talk of western part, I've been from Kericho all the way to Trans Nzoia. We have around 15 counties that are already growing sugarcane. 80% of these sugarcane growers are small-scale farmers who own an average of 0.8 hectares, that is 2 acres, so to say. And we also have medium-scale farmers within the region who own up to around 50 acres, and then we have large-scale farmers, mainly within the Nyando sugar belt, where you have somebody owning over 100 acres of land. So to say, you find that sugar cane in most of the counties is harvested late, and therefore because of issues of farm machinery breakdowns, so you find the factory has closed down for the purpose of service. And when they have closed down, the farmers do not have where to sell their cane within that particular region, so there is delayed harvesting. And for that reason, you find now the cane delays on the farm, and therefore it becomes difficult for farmers to be able to adopt our early maturing varieties, which you are supposed to harvest at the right time, that is 12 months. With delay, then we lose the sugar content in the crop, and we also lose the weight of the stock. And that's the reason why you find there is low adoption. Currently, we are talking about 37% adoption rate of the improved varieties. Yet we have so many varieties. We have 27 improved varieties, which are more tolerant to pests and diseases. They are early maturing. Within a calendar year, you can have a crop. And a check on your table, of course. And then also, these early maturing varieties are more tolerant to drought. We are talking about climate smart agriculture. They are more tolerant to drought. We're also looking at the sugar content in that particular stock, and you realize that the early maturing varieties have very high pole% cane. Pole% cane is that the sugar content within that particular cane. So you find that we are trying to encourage farmers to be able to adopt that so that they go into agribusiness other than just doing it manually because they've adopted from their neighbors. Yeah.
And being the head of the Sugar Research Institute, can you break it down for us what exactly you're doing, because you have mentioned that we have 27 improved varieties, and how you ensure that the farmers know that it's better to plant this variety other than this one.
Yeah. Okay, in the Sugar Research Institute, it's one of the 16 institutions that are under the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. So I am an institute director currently for that Sugar Research Institute, based in Kisumu. That's where our head office is. We have a sub-center, which is a breeding center in Mutuapa, that is in Kilifi County at the coast. That's the only breeding center within East Africa, so to say. We are proud about that. We have also some sub-center in Opapo, that is in Migori County. So it serves the entire area, undertakes the mandate of disseminating our technologies to the entire counties within the South Nyanza region. We also have a sub-center in Mumias, which undertakes the mandate to disseminate technologies within the Western region belt. Yeah.
And you've talked about 27 improved varieties.
Yes.
Is this Kenya's work, Kenya's research? And how are you ensuring that farmers exactly know that these are far much better and can bring in more yields than what they have been doing previously?
Good. We have 27 Kenyan varieties. Usually when we breed, we import some of the best performing varieties within the region. Across from other countries, and then we are able to cross them and be able to come up with a Kenyan variety. So these are actually Kenyan varieties which our breeders have been able to release. And I will say that for us to be able to allow our farmers to access these varieties, we have a technology transfer and dissemination unit. This is the docket that is able now to go out and educate farmers. During farmers forums, we are able to talk to farmers. During farmer field days, we are able to talk to farmers, because through field days, we establish adoption demonstration plots. And when we are able to establish these demonstration plots, that is through which the farmers are able to see us being able to apply the technologies that we give to them in form of good agricultural practices. So the farmers are able to learn from the entire region, and also those that we invite on a specific field day. We also organize open days. From the open days, we are able now also to be able to talk to farmers within the region, because we advertise it widely. We also have digital forums on which we release this information. If you go to Kalro, www.kalro.org, you'll find Sugar Research Institute. Then if you follow the web page, you're able to find the technologies that we have disseminated within the country. Yeah. And
looking at these new varieties, and the current sugar, if we look at the current sugar situation in the country, we are importing a lot of sugar from Brazil, from the Comesa region. Are these new varieties, can we be able to be sugar sufficient in this republic?
You're right. We are able to become sugar sufficient. Why? Because we are importing a deficit of 500,000 metric tons. That's our deficit currently, because there is high demand for sugar. Because sugar is not only taken on table, it's also used in the confectionery industries and other industrial products. So we are importing a deficit of 500,000 metric tons. Now, we are able to become sugar sufficient if we are able to explore opportunities for increased sugarcane production. For example, at the coast, we have a lot of potential. Why? The same varieties that mature in 12 months within the western or the highland areas of Kericho to Trans Nzoia, those very varieties mature within 7 months at the coast. 7 to 8 months you have harvested your crop. Why? Because it is very humid. And sugarcane thrives well in low altitude and also in very humid areas. The only unfortunate thing is that at the coast we don't have sufficient moisture, because rainfall at the coast is about 1,100 millimeters annually. Yet sugarcane requires a minimum of 1,500 millimeters of rainfall. So because of that deficit, we need to be able to supplement through irrigation so that the crop does not suffer moisture stress. So if we do that, I can assure you we are able to become sugar sufficient. Another way we can do this is also by exploiting potentials of crop rotation, climate smart approaches of crop rotation. We are encouraging farmers to be able to rotate their crop for sustainable farming, because sugarcane is a monoculture crop, and that's how farmers have taken it. But currently, because of the climate change problems, we are telling farmers you should be able to curtail the climate change risks by being able to intercrop, being able to rotate your crop, so that it is not just the same place you're growing sugarcane time and again. You can, I'll tell you this, that sugarcane can live on your farm as long as 10 years or 10 even years. 12 years. Yes, one crop. Why? Because you'll harvest it. If it is the improved variety, you're harvesting at 12 months. If you delay to 13 months, and then this next crop is a ratoon crop. So you'll proceed by harvesting every year. And as you do that, through good agricultural practices, then you can do up to 12 ratoons. Now, those 12 ratoons, imagine those are 12 calendar years.
Yes.
Add on to the first crop that you harvested to give you the ratoons, that's 13 years. One crop on your farm. So it will continue consuming the nutrients from the soils. And therefore, through that leaching of those nutrients, you realize that the soil will become sick. So we call it acidity. Very acidic. When the soil is very acidic, then the next crop you're going to plant will not do well. That's why the yields are going down. Currently, we are talking about average yields of 70 tons of cane per hectare. Yet, research, when we release the variety, we talk about the potential of 100 tons of cane per hectare. We don't imply that a farmer should get 100. We just imply you should get a minimum of 100 tons of cane per hectare. And that means, and we have seen research showing us there are some areas like Tana River Delta where you can be able to get up to 200 tons of cane per hectare under irrigation. Therefore, with good agricultural practices adopted by our farmers through our educational forums, and I'm saying, you realize that you can be able to do up to 250. In Transmara, they are doing 250 tons of cane per hectare. So we give a minimum of 100 tons of cane per hectare, but a farmer can get up to 40. Another one will do 60. That's why we have an average of 70. I'm saying that with good agricultural practices, farmers should be able to receive a minimum of 100 tons of cane per hectare. So when you continue repetitively growing cane in the same farm, the next crop definitely has to go down in form of yield. So we are encouraging them to be able to adopt crop rotation. We are also saying that we should be able to explore other areas like the Tana River Delta that I've just mentioned. It has high potential. We tested some varieties there, and some of them gave up to 17 to 18% pole, and I've said that is the sucrose content in that particular cane. So it has given us up to 18%, and that's very high. And therefore, if we exploit such areas, we should be able to be sugar sufficient. Now I urge the government actually to be able to look into matters irrigation at the coast, because sugarcane cannot grow at the coast minus irrigation. Yeah.
Of course, and you'll be telling us all the new advancement that you have made and how the farmers are embracing this new, because in Kenya, when you introduce something, we have a delay, a wait and see game when it comes to introduction of new, but this is a new evolution, but it can help farmers harvest more and at the end of the day have better crop rotation, just like you said.
Yeah, right.
Of course, we will be discussing more about this sweet issue of a sugar industry in the country. And joining me on set, I have been hosting Dr. Betty Mulianga, who is the director of Kalro-Sugar Research Institute. We are trying to put things into perspective on how we can jumpstart and how, as a research institution, they are working with not only researchers, also farmers, to ensure that we have better farming and better sugar industry in the country. And earlier on, before we went for that break, we talked about availability or available sugar technologies that you guys are working on. We would like to hear some of them.
Yeah, we have 27 improved varieties that are Kenya-based. Our breeding is Kenya. We also have other technologies where we have the improved agricultural practices or good agricultural practices, where we encourage farmers to be able to sample their soils, bring them for testing. We go to the field, we sample their soils, we bring to the lab, we analyze them, and we recommend for the specific fertilizer for that particular farm. We also have other technologies that include estimating sugarcane yields, remote sensing based technologies for estimating sugarcane yields, and that is able to help the industry be able to cut down on cost of undertaking sugarcane census by 50%. We also have supplemental irrigation technologies so that farmers can be able to use drip irrigation. We have released these technologies. Then we also have pest surveillance technologies. We have been able to test several herbicides and release their amounts of utilization to be able to manage weeds and pests in the industry. And then we also have other technologies that include tillage practices. Like, for example, we have a high cost of production, which is introduced by the cost of land preparation. Now, we have been able to release technologies that start with minimum tillage and also go to reduced tillage. And you only go into conventional tillage when there is that particular need. Another technology we have is for utilization of wastewater. We are able to clean the wastewater, and we've released that technology for cleaning the wastewater using sand. And then we are able to circulate it back into the system through irrigation. Yeah, and many more technologies that we have.
From what I've heard, a farmer who is listening to you would wonder, we have new varieties, we have new farming practices. Is it affordable for our farmers to ensure that they are able to access not only the new varieties, but also the farming inputs that surround these new varieties?
Yes, first of all, before the break, you asked about the reasons why farmers don't adopt. In every adoption as an activity, you'll have early adopters. Those early adopters, when they see you have a demonstration site, they come and learn and they pick it up immediately. But we also have other adopters who now form into the early majority. So they are going to influence their neighbors. And then we have the laggards, never adopt any technology. Whichever language you speak, they will never adopt it. They're like always skeptical that that's what I can't try. Let me continue with my history. And then we also have late majority. So you start with the early adopters, you go to early majority, and then late majority. So among the late majority, some may also join, and they are able now to partake of the same when they realize that others are also able to make a lot of income. So they'll come and join. So you have the late majority. So it depends on where the farmer wants to adopt these technologies. But going back to your question, you're asking why they're able to not able to adopt these technologies. It's because we have some relative advantage that I can be able to access these varieties from my neighborhood. When that comes, then they'll also be able to get it from the neighborhood and adopt the technologies. Then we have triability. Somebody just wants to try and see whether actually you can be able to make gain from this new variety. So triability. Somebody can try it maybe in a very small unit. And I can assure you, when they try in a small unit, they don't maximize all the profits, because we have a limited size of land for cane development. We've released that as a technology, that if you have up to 2 acres, you can be able to make some gain from that investment. We also have the cost of the technology. How far do you travel to be able to access that improved variety? So some farmers are limited to adopt, not because they are laggards, but because they cannot be able to access this technology. So what we are doing as an institution, we are trying to ensure that we disseminate even the technology, the sugarcane varieties. We establish the seed within regions where farmers can easily access. These regions, based on our current setup now, we establish within the factories. And the main factories we established in are the government-owned factories. Reason being, they have nucleus estates. They have large land that was contributed by the community. So it is referred to as a nucleus estate. So it is easy for us to access such land through the factory. And then we establish the seed, the improved varieties there. Therefore, when the factory has the seed, then the farmers can be able to access the seed through the factory. So it is availability. Now, there are only 5 government-owned factories. The private sector factories do not have such land. They don't have that benefit. But I'm happy that today, some private factories are really trying to lease land from farmers and are able to bulk the seed with us. Yeah, they are coming up now with that. But previously, we've been bulking our seed with the government-owned factories so that they can be able to reach out to the farmers within their mandate areas so that farmers can be able to adopt this. So those are the reasons why they don't adopt. Yeah.
And as a research institution, what are some of the strategies for increasing production in the country? And also, that will also dictate on the pricing, because I believe if we have more cane in the country and farmers adopt these new varieties, it could even bring down the cost of sugar in the country.
You are right. What we are doing, we are disseminating this information, as I said earlier, through media, mainly through the Kalro website, www.kalro.org. Then you go to the Sugar Research Institute, you link, you're able to access those technologies. We are also trying to encourage the investors to be able to invest with us, so that they can, donors, to be able to invest with us, so that we can be able to disseminate these technologies to the farmers. As a research institute, our mandate is to develop technologies. One technology that I did not mention earlier was on industrial research. We are working closely with the factories to release other technologies that can be able to utilize the waste products, what you term as waste products from the factories, the molasses to do ethanol, the bagasse to do fertilizers, organic fertilizers, bagasse to do paper, to release disposable plates, and that's what is happening. To bagasse to do briquettes, to promote green energy, and able to also encourage farmers to be able to undertake soil sampling. We are encouraging factories to help farmers be able to undertake soil sampling, so that we are able to give the required recommendations for that particular area. Actually, soil testing answers a question on if you are sick, what medicine do you take? You need to go to hospital, you are tested and diagnosed with a disease or no disease. If you have a disease, then you are given the specific medicine. And that's the reason why we're saying that we have to start with soil testing. But most farmers are not able to adopt these technologies because they feel it is very costly to undertake soil testing and analysis. They prefer to invest such money now just to buy the seed. And so through trial and error of fertilizer application amounts and which type of fertilizer, you find farmers do not reap much gain from their throughput. And that's the reason, that's what we are working on. We are encouraging even the county governments to collaborate with us so that they can be able to help their farmers to undertake soil testing. Actually, it's very important to undertake soil testing so that we can be able to tell even which variety will be suitable for your particular soil. You don't just adopt a variety because your neighbor is reaping gains from it. So through soil testing, we are able to do this. So actually, we measure on research, technologies, and that is our goal and our mandate. But we are encouraging that we should be able to invest more in the cost, and we are talking with AFA Sugar Directorate, which is the regulatory authority for the sugar sector. We are talking with them to encourage new investors into the coastal region. I'm happy that we have 3 investors, potential investors, who are already showing signs that they can be able to invest in the Tana River Delta, to invest in Magarini ya Kilifi, and also invest in Kwale. So we are seeing those potential ones. They have approached us for feasibility studies because we are the ones monitored with the feasibility studies, so that we can be able to encourage that. Actually, if we invest in that, I can assure you that we are going to have enough sugar supply in the country.
It's a good thing that you've mentioned that, because I'm looking at the cost and the partnership you've mentioned. Because if it's a farmer who has a number of acres, and he can put up some maybe a few acres, 10, 20 acres of sugarcane. You're talking about soil testing, sampling, and new varieties. This is something that is going to take some money.
Yeah.
Partnership, we have only 5 public companies.
Yes.
And we have around 11 private companies.
Yeah.
If we encourage partnerships between either by the company or even your research institutions, farmers the cost of farming could come down, and especially when we talk about the new or embracing new technologies and new varieties as well.
You're right. You're right. We're encouraging partnership between the factories and the county governments who are charged with the dissemination of technologies, and ourselves as a research institution. Recently, we released a technology because you're looking at the cost of production. That is one limiting factor for farmers to adopt technologies. In that cost of production, we have tried to reduce the cost of production by, first of all, reducing the cost of seed. How are we doing this? We are encouraging farmers now to be able to use single IBAT technology. The single IBAT technology is where you only remove that bud. It's the bud which germinates. Even when you use a whole stalk in the soil, only the bud will be able to germinate, not the entire stalk. So we say if a farmer can be able to scoop that IBAT and be able to plant it in a portable tube to raise a seedling, the rest of the stalk is intact. It can be taken to the factory for milling. That's what we are doing as an institution. Now that technology, we validated it from India. We got it from India, and we have now validated it. It is able to reduce the cost of seed by 30%. Now, cost of seed is a very expensive endeavor for farmers. So we are encouraging them now to be able to come and purchase the seedlings from the institution. We are also training these farmers to be able to do their own single IBATs so that they can be able to minimize even on that idea of waiting for the onset of rains to be able to establish. Another technology we've released so that because it's climate smart, we are saying that you can establish your seedlings, keep them in a shed, and just await the onset of rains, go and establish. So at the same time, you have been able to catch up with the season. You've not lost the season. The seed is already germinated. So you only transfer it to the farm and establish. Now, the spacing between the seed is 0.6 centimeters. So you realize when you do that, you also have space to be able to establish your intercrops, like in form of legumes or any cover crop. So you're going to minimize on the issue of evaporation. When you minimize on the issue of evaporation, you are allowing more moisture to be able to support the germination of this sugarcane. That's the technology we are disseminating to farmers. That in itself reduces the requirement for 3 tons of sugarcane seed per acre to 1 ton of sugarcane seed per acre. That one seedling is able to produce up to a maximum of 25 tillers. Tillers are the shootings. So you are able to have 20 to 25 shootings. So you can imagine if you have 25 shootings from one single bud, then at that time you have a whole big, huge stool. So that population is what is going to give you the weight, is what is going to give you the income from that particular crop. So you find that what the other part of the stock utilizes in the soil is not now taken care of. You're only taking care of the fertilizer that is able to help the seedling to germinate. That implies you're also reducing on the cost of fertilizer, because you're going to use very little fertilizer just for that particular hole where you are putting the seedling, and not the entire stretch of a furrow. So we are telling farmers to minimize on the cost of production. Another thing we are doing, we are telling them, if your soil is loamy, why do you go into 2-3 plows? You can do 1 plow and then do a harrow and just furrow and plant. Or you can do a harrow, do a furrow and plant. That's what we are telling farmers. That is also able to bring the cost of production down. And when we do this, those who have tried it so far have really gained. Our sugar is not competitive because in the region, because it is very expensive. And that expense comes from the cost of that production. If we reduce on the cost of seed, reduce on the cost of fertilizer, reduce on the cost of land preparation, believe me, we can comfortably undertake soil testing and sampling so that we know the right seed to plant, so that we know the right fertilizer to use and the amount of the fertilizer to use for that particular farm. When we invest, then we reap. If we don't invest, then we go around chasing the wind, chasing after the wind, and eventually we don't gain.
And talking about fertilizer and partnerships, let's look at a private one. Yeah. I've seen a company like Elgon Kenya. They partner with farmers and provide the inputs, the fertilizer, and then a little bit later on, they can now, after they have partnered with the farmer can reap, and maybe they can more or less do a partnership again. Private companies chipping in with their inputs, with their fertilizer, with their money, to help the farmer to produce more, just like the government did with fertilizer, to subsidize on fertilizer. This is something that can be a game changer. Yeah. And especially now that we have new varieties in the country that farmers are not quite embraced as they should.
You're right. This idea of partnership has been there for a long time within the government-owned factories. But now the private sector, because of the competition, have decided also to come up on board. They are on board. I've seen factories around, I don't want to mention their names, but I've seen most of the private factories, because we actually interact so much with them. We give them our seed. Sometimes we engage them even in our land preparation as contractors. And I can assure you that now they have bought the idea. Now they are giving farmers seed, they are giving farmers fertilizer. And then at the end of the day, they wait for the proceeds. When the farmer receives their proceeds, they are able now to get their payment from those proceeds, and the farmers continue in their business. Yeah, so if we continue in that particular spirit, because the private sector was not embracing that earlier due to, I call it unhealthy competition within the sector, because you can give farmers your inputs, and then the farmer sells the cane to somebody else, because we have open market. So you can sell your cane anywhere. Now, because of that, the private sectors were a bit afraid of engaging into giving such materials to the farmers. But currently, they are now strong, they are confident with their farmers, they even have their own farmers whom they have contracted. So that is happening, and I'm sure it will be a game changer.
From where you sit, over the years, we have witnessed a lot of sugar imports in the country, and we even had issues, even took a bill in Parliament about sugar imports. What do other countries do right to the point that they have so much sugar, so such that they can even sell it to us? What are we not doing right? Because we have to always import sugar in the country, yet we have the capacity and the capability to produce our own sugar.
Yeah, on the issue of imports, that's a policy matter which I may not discuss much, but I'll mention this, that in the other countries, the cost of production is down, is low, really low. Why? Because the government has subsidized so much, like in terms of fertilizer, in terms of availability of machineries, because they are mechanized. Actually, what I have not mentioned is the mechanized farming. I've seen this at Kwale International Factory at the coast. They have embraced mechanical harvesting. If we go into mechanization, and we encourage the government to be able to invest into mechanization of sugarcane farming, specifically for medium to large-scale farms. I want to assure you that we are going to bring down the cost of sugarcane production, because you invest in what I've said: land preparation, fertilizer, weeding, the manual weeding that we go into, and then eventually, again, we invest into manual harvesting, so it becomes so costly, and that's why our sugar is very expensive. That's the reason why we are not competitive. You talk of imports, we have been enjoying safeguards. Safeguards in the Comesa region since 2002. For the 13th time, there is an extension of the same safeguard, where the member states of the Comesa are encouraged to sell to Kenya because of that, to be able to bridge that deficit. But now they are preferring to sell to the international countries, where they can be able to sell at a higher price than into Kenya, because Kenya is a member state. They're not allowed to sell at an exorbitant price. So I'll say that we have that deficit. Yes, we require the imports, but if we invest into the mechanized farming, and that requires the hand of the government to invest into mechanized farming, I want to believe that we can be able to subsidize on the rates of land preparation. Another thing we would do is subsidize on fertilizer. You find that there are subsidies onto the food crops, fertilizers used for food crops. But when it comes to cash crops, you realize that it's not there. So if we encourage subsidies on fertilizers, like other states are doing, like Brazil, sugarcane production is zero rated. So you find that even the taxes are very low for that particular product. So eventually the country is able to sell their prices at a very low price, which cannot compete with our sugar price in Kenya. Yeah.
And we're in a digital space, and Kenya has made quite some strides in terms of digital farming. There's this digital cane technology, because at the end of the day, if a farmer has good soils, he has good fertilizer, he has good seeds, but he's not able to manage the whole process, he's not gonna be having the best value for his money and his farm as well. What are you using in terms of technology to ensure that the technology will also help the farmers get more value for what they have?
Yeah. What we have done in form of technology is to disseminate a product through Kalro website. We have a product through Kalro website, so that if you see any pest on the crop, you can take a picture and send to that platform. And then a scientist will be always ready to be able to interpret the disease for you, and they give you a call and they advise you on the herbicide to use or pesticide to use to be able to eradicate that. Another thing we are doing digitally is to encourage farmers to embrace early warning technology, because we have released an early warning system through a project that we had, crop monitoring. So we released an early warning system. Farmers are able to embrace that early warning system to be able to detect if there are any changes on their farm. Another thing we have done is also to avail the co-op. We have another product on Kalro website. Their farmers are able to check to see that there is rainfall sufficient for them to go and establish their crop, to go and apply fertilizer, because sometimes farmers just apply fertilizer, then it is wasted because there's no rainfall to absorb that fertilizer into the soils. We have also allowed farmers to be able to access the co-op product on Kalro website, so that they can be able to establish whether there will be sufficient rainfall within the week or not, so that you don't apply fertilizer to waste. So there are various digital products that we have released on Kalro website, and our farmers have been linked to them and they are using them. Yeah.
Now, you've talked about some varieties. I'm quite sure a lot of Kenyans didn't know that. I didn't know there was quite some fine and researched right here in the country. And is it cost effective to the farmer? Far much better than what they have been doing, because at the end of the day, we talked about how Kenyans have a wait and see game before they indulge into something.
Yeah, you're right. Those varieties that we have been able to disseminate, I'll not mention all of them, because if they come to our link or our website, they'll be able to see the names of the varieties. What did you ask again? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm talking about, is it cost effective vis-a-vis what they had been doing earlier on?
You're right. the varieties are cost effective. Why? They have very high sugar content. 2, they are able to withstand, we call it toleration. They're able to tolerate diseases, the common diseases and pests. Like the smart disease, they're able to withstand that. They're able to tolerate the ratoon standing disease, which was actually destroying an entire crop. You plant your crop, and at 6 months, the crop gets just retarded. It doesn't grow anymore. So you reap nothing, you lose the whole crop. That is just a zero score. So we have released those varieties that are able to tolerate that. We also have released those varieties that are early maturing. Like a farmer would wait up to 24 months to put money in the pocket for a product that you heavily invested in. But now within 12 months, you are able to reap that. And if you establish at the cost, then 8 months you have money in your pocket. Those very varieties have also a lot of vigor. And because of that vigor, if they are harvested at the right time, they have high weight. They also have very high ratoonability. So you can harvest up to 12 times of that particular crop. Comparable to the old ones, you'll only harvest 3 times and the crop is no more. It doesn't give you any money. Therefore, you uproot it. So they have very high ratoonability. And then we also released another product, I was forgetting to say this, for integrated weed management, so that you don't just invest into manual weeding. Manual weeding is very costly. So we encourage farmers to be able to adopt integrated weed management. Recently, we released another technology to be able to allow farmers to do split fertilizer application. You apply at 3 months, also apply at 6 months. And that has also really encouraged the crops, that the crop can utilize the fertilizer it was planted with. Up to 3 months, you energize it to grow. At 6 months, you finish. And then you leave the crop now just for harvest. And farmers are really adopting that. So the improved varieties have very high quality. They also have high sucrose content. There's one thing that I'd forgotten to talk about, the quality-based payment system. It's a technology we released. And AFA has been grappling with it. Currently, it has been awakened again. They're working on it. If the industry can be able to get into the sucrose-based payment system, then the improved varieties have very high sugar content. The farmers will be paid based on the quality of the sugar within the stock. And therefore, the farmers will reap very high. Yeah.
And the rains are here with us, and the sugar belt has experienced some quite heavy rains. And this is not going to the new varieties. I haven't heard you mention in terms of water and the sugar belt right now. It's quite rainy at the moment. Is it something that maybe you have also factored in terms of your research?
Yes, when you have too much water into the soil, then all our nutrients are leaked. So there's high leaching. When we leach all our nutrients, then the crop will have nothing to feed on. That's the reason why we need to invest into drainage. We have various drainage technologies. We are encouraging farmers to plant their seed on ridges instead of the furrows within the Nyando sugar belt. That is where we have a lot of flooding currently. You're just avoiding to talk about flooding. We have flooding, but we have encouraged farmers to do ridge planting. And some factories have already been able to fabricate an implement for opening furrows on the ridge. And that's what is happening within the Nyando sugar belt. That is able to drain the excess water from the soil. That's happening. We're also encouraging farmers to do leveling of their land, so that when you have various depressions, then the crop actually will rot. So we encourage them to level their land. And I'm happy that within the Nyando belt, we have a factory with such machinery, and farmers are able to utilize that machinery to be able to levelize their land. Then they do the ridging, and the ridges are able to drain excessive water from the soils.
I'm quite sure also a farmer who's watching has been quite enlightened, the fact that he can have a variety of around 16, 17 varieties that he can sample depending on maybe his terrain, depending on a number of factors. What are some of the challenges or shortcomings of the new breed that you've talked about?
One shortcoming of the new varieties, there are 27 in number. We released some in 2014. And now we have 2018 or so. Then now we've released in 2022, last year, we released the other 7 varieties. So we have 27 varieties that our farmers can be able to absorb. One advantage that I missed to talk about is that they have wide adaptability. We have one variety that I love so much, Ken 83737. You can grow it anywhere in this country within the sugarcane growing zones because we have suitability maps, which we have released to the country. So you can grow it anywhere and it will thrive. Now, the challenges we have with the improved varieties is that if you delay to harvest them, they'll dry in the stock. The stock will dry. So once it dries, then you lose all the sugar. Any factory harvesting that crop will not reap any sugar from it. They may pay a farmer based on the low weight because they lose their weight. When they dry, definitely they have low weight. And because the industry is paying farmers based on weight, you find that the farmer will lose. And also the factory will lose on recovery of sugar. Because 10 tons give you 1 ton of sugar. So they will lose. It is a loss for all the stakeholders. So we encourage that farmers should grow their improved varieties, but in tandem with the factory calendar, so that the factories harvest the crop at the right time. 12 months. If they are very late, 14 months. Beyond that, we have nothing we are reaping. So that is the encouragement we're taking. That's the only disadvantage. I will also mention, aside the sugarcane, even if you have a graded animal, if you don't take care of it, you'll not reap any milk from it.
That's true.
So the improved varieties require very good management practices. If you don't weed the crop, you reap nothing or very little from it. So farmers will argue that when they grow an old variety like CO421, even if they don't weed, they get something, because it can be able to withstand the grasses, the weeds. But we are encouraging that farmers should stop calling sugarcane a poor man's crop. Sugarcane is a very good crop in which we can invest and be able to reap profitably. I've seen people being able to turn around their economies. Sugarcane actually supports more than 10 million farmers or households in this country. So there's so many people that are being supported. Others have been educated through this. They have been fed through this. They have turned around their economies. Why? Because of this particular crop. And therefore, the only challenge we have is the loss of weight when there is delayed harvesting. And yet we depend on the tonnage to pay farmers. Yeah.
And the cost of these new varieties?
Yes.
How is it vis-a-vis what we have in the market? Because mostly you find that these new breed come with an extra cost.
I can assure you that we are a government-based organization, so we don't increase the cost for the improved varieties. The cost of seed is the same all over. And it goes in tandem with the cost of the commercial cane. Currently, we are trading at 5,500 per ton of commercial cane. We are also doing the same for the seed that farmers are coming to buy, irrespective of when it was released. Yeah.
And this is something, it might not be in your domain, but it really affects the sugar industry, alternative sources of sugar. Because yes, sugar is not just for putting in tea. We have confectionery, we have a number of factories and companies who use sugar, alternative sources of sugar other than sugarcane. Are you doing any other research in regards to that?
We are doing some other research, yes, on sugar beet, which didn't start yesterday. It began sometime in the mid-2000. We undertook a research on sugar beet. And we realized that it can do very well in high altitudes like Nyandarua. And we have our researcher working with a researcher in Tigoni on the same sugar beet to see how much the viability of the sugar. Actually, it is very high. We also have another source of sugar, which is stevia. We are working on stevia. We have it at the research station in Kibos. And we have some farmers already doing stevia in Kericho. And others are doing stevia within Nyando and Migori. They are doing stevia for sugar. And we are happy to report that stevia actually is sweeter than our sugarcane sugar by 200 times, and it has no calories.
200 times?
Yeah, so it's best used as a sweetener. We are also working on sweet sorghum. Sweet sorghum is another source of sugar, and it is mainly used in the breweries, the breweries industry. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then lastly, we're also working on cassava. Cassava has some sugar. Yeah, so we're working on that also to see how much sugar we can extract from cassava.
And how are things so far? I know it might be a little bit earlier, but how are things going on?
I don't want to report on that. Yes. It's very low at the moment. There's a factory in Busia actually working on that. And we are using the cassava farmers within that particular region and Kisumu to see whether we can extract sugar from cassava and how much of it. So it is still in the initial, the basic phases, not very worth to report on, but we're working on that. And soon when we get an opportunity, we shall be able to release the information.
All right, as we wrap up, what is the future of the sugar industry in Kenya? Of course, we have steered clear of the politics and the policies, because a lot of people have argued that we need to privatize the sugar industry in the country because we have been having these issues over and over again. But they believe that if we privatize, we could perhaps straighten the sugar industry in the country. It has been ailing for a while.
The matter of privatizing sugar industry is because of the improved technologies that the private sector is using. And also the matter of servicing their machinery. You find that our Kenyan-owned factories, we take too long even to procure a part that is required to run the factory. So the future is that, I don't want to really mention about policy matters, but actually the private sector tends to be doing better than the government sector, reason being the improved machineries that they have in terms of recovery. How much sugar can you be able to get from 1 ton of sugar cane? So the future of the industry actually is bright. Is bright, and from where I sit, I will encourage that we invest mainly at the coast into irrigation, into new machinery that can be efficient enough to recover so much sugar from the crop. It's bright. Yes, because I've seen many farmers who are laggards. Now they're waking up and they're coming to request for the seed. And they're like, we can try this. I've seen factories now in the wake, and they're like, give us the improved varieties. We want to put money on the table at the end of every calendar year. And let us see how farmers can be able to do. So we're seeing that wake up call, and also a lot of collaboration. The private factories are able now to come and ask us, can we be able to contract you? We get part of the land, we establish our seed so that we are sure of availability of raw material from you in terms of seed, and they're doing that. So you find a factory coming and they're like, establish for us 10 hectares for these, and they're able to support that establishment. And when the crop is ready, they come and harvest their seed and they're able to utilize. We're seeing that adoption rate is going up, and therefore the future for sugarcane farming is very high.
All right. Yeah. Thank you indeed so much for your insight and for coming.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have been speaking to Dr. Betty Mulianga. Dr. Betty is the director, Kalro-Sugar Research Institute there, talking about the sugar industry here in the country and how things currently are. We have stayed clear out of the politics and the policies themselves, but Kalro, whatever they are doing in terms of research, so that the farmer can benefit from that. 27 new breeds? 27 new breeds of sugarcane, and they are not stopped yet. They are still doing it. Thank you so much for joining us for that first hour. In this second hour, we will be looking at the finance bill as proposed by Treasury 2023, and it has ruffled a lot of feathers. Well, it has brought about a lot of discussion. We'll be talking about that. I can see already we have MP Bomachoge Alpha Miruka, who is already in studio. Let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back.